We can hear you, and please introduce yourself fully and tell us about your work, and please tell us a story.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Valeria Elliott, and I am a podcaster. On my podcast, what I do is I share personal stories, and my personal stories are to help people to grow, mature, to make good decisions. I use things that I've gone through to help them know that there's someone out that there's someone out there that's gone through the same thing and how I made it through. The story I'm sharing today is about a monarch in our family. He was such a great person, and he changed the lives of so many people.
We've got a serious agenda. We've got a potential war situation in Ukraine.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Going. Keep going.
All families have someone that they look up to or they consider a monarch. In my family, it was my big daddy. My big daddy, oh my God, I don't know why they call him Big Daddy, because he wasn't a big man. He was a small man, but we all call him Big Daddy, and he became my big daddy. My big daddy, he had several businesses. He was an entrepreneur. Any given day, you would find him working in one of those businesses. My favorite was his beauty shop. He had a barber shop, and he also had a field where he grew all kinds of vegetables. He would allow me to come in and work in the businesses with him. He taught me how to use the equipment. He taught me how to talk to the customers that came inside. He taught me how to cut hair. I remember this one day, I was about 7 years old, and he allowed me to help him sharpen some of his equipment. On the wall, he had this big, long leather strap, and he put the razor in my hand, and he put his hand on top of my hand. I grabbed a piece of leather, and we glided it back and forth across that leather strap. And let me tell you, when we finished, I felt like I was the most important little girl in the world, because my big daddy trusted me to help him with his equipment. He looked down at me and he said, "Now, don't you tell your parents I let you sharpen this razor, because they're going to think it's too dangerous and they just won't understand." I looked at him with my big eyes and I said, "Yes, sir," because there was no way I was going to tell my parents, because I knew they would not let me come back. And I was learning so much. Now, my big daddy, he had 2 wives. The first wife was Big Mama. I don't know why they call her Big Mama. She died before I was born. But I remember what she looked like. They had this big picture of her in the dining room. And every time I looked at her, I felt like I was looking at my grandmother, because my grandmother looked just like her. His second wife was Sissy B. And again, I don't know where they get these names from, but that's what we called her. We called her Sissy B. She treated my big daddy like a king. Every time he came home, she had a hot meal waiting for him. Now, my favorite times were the times that I spent with him at the dining room table. Every time I would come over, we would sit at the dining room table. Sissy B would have it set. She would have his newspaper in front of him in ABC order. I don't even know where that came from, but the paper was in ABC order. She would have a hot cup of coffee, and she would bring him a hot cup of food, a hot plate of food. She would place it down. He would say grace. And as soon as he said amen, the stories, the riddles, and the tongue twister started. He would tell me all these riddles, and all these tongue twisters. And as he was telling them, his hands would be waving all over the place. Tall, big, little, small, fat. I mean, and his facial expressions, he made the most amazing facial expressions. I think he did that to make the story funny, and it worked. Sometimes he would ask me to do a riddle, or he would ask me to do a tongue twister. I could never do it all the way through. So I would have to ask him for help. He loved that. He would jump right in and he would help me finish. And every time he did, I felt so proud. I was like, I did it. I did it. And he looked at me, you did do it. Now, there were times when my two brothers and sisters would also come with me to visit my big daddy. And on those times, he would take us outside in the backyard for a walk. Now, the thing about the walk in the backyard was this. In the backyard, we could pick snacks from the backyard. Yes, snacks. He had a huge walnut tree. He had apple trees. He had peach trees, and he had fig trees. So we would walk around the backyard and he would tell us stories, and we would just pick up a nut, crack it, eat it. We would grab an apple or a fig, and we would walk around and listen to these stories. And he told us stories about when he was a little boy, growing up, why it's so important to have your own businesses. His brothers lived on the side, on both sides of his house. He would tell a story about the three brothers. But then there were times when we would venture out into the fields. I love this part because in the fields, he would tell us about the different vegetables that he was growing. He would tell us when's the perfect time to plant when, the name of the vegetables. He would tell us what you need to do to make it grow to its maximum level. He would also walk us down the roads and he would tell us about the land, the dirt, the land, what you need to do, how to cultivate it, how to prepare it for the next season. We were like sponges. We were absorbing all of this. And little did we know is in our family, we were eating organic before organic was popular. The sad thing about all of this was my big daddy, he passed away when I was about 14. That was the hardest time in my life because what it meant to me was there was no more sitting around the dining room table, listening to stories, riddles, and tongue twisters. That means that was no more time going into the barber shop and a beauty shop and learning about how to do hair and how to serve customers. It meant no more walking around the backyard, getting snacks, fruits, and listening to a story or learning about the earth and learning about how to grow things. All of that ended. I remember the funeral was packed. There were so many people, not only in the church, but on the outside of the church. People were there because they loved him. He served the community so well. He would hire some of the guys in the community just to help them out. He knew they were struggling and their families were struggling. He would even cut their hair, or he would allow some of the ladies to get their hair done for free just to help them out because he knew it was hard times. I remember sitting in the church and I looked on the front row. My big daddy was a deacon in the church and he always sat on the front row. And I remember every Sunday I felt so proud because he was my big daddy. When the funeral ended, the band started playing and people start crying and some people were passing out and my heart was so full. All I wanted to do was get out of there. I couldn't take it anymore. My mom and my dad and everybody, we exited the church. And I remember as we were leaving the neighborhood, we could still hear the band playing. They played the entire time. When we got to the burial site, everyone was exiting their cars. And all of a sudden we looked up and the sky was gray. It started raining buckets. I mean, the water was just coming down, but no one left at all. No one. It was just as many people at the funeral as there were at the church. When they finished the funeral, the sky cleared up as if it never rained. I was sitting there and my grandma, she looked down at me because I was crying and I was upset, but I was also confused. I'm like, why would it rain like this, at his funeral? It's messing it up. And my grandmother, she put her arm around me and she said, baby, it didn't mess it up. What this means is whenever it rains, when someone dies, that means that they were a good person. And I kind of looked at her and said, but it had to rain. She said, yes, baby. And it poured buckets. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. And I do believe it's true now that I'm older. But on that day, it was so true. And I think it had to rain buckets because my Big Daddy was such a great person. Now, some years later, when I look back, I realized that my grandfather, he sewed so much into me because of him allowing me to go to the barber shop and to the beauty shop. I became a hairdresser. I have always wanted to have my own business because that's all we ever saw in him. He had his own businesses and he never worked for anyone, just himself and God. And I always wanted that. And then I decided that I wanted to be a storyteller. And I know that that came from him because sometimes when I'm telling a story, I'm sitting there, whether it's with children or adults, or even on my podcast when nobody can see me, when I'm sharing a story, I can visually see my Big Daddy sitting at the dining room table telling me a story or a riddle, and I could see his hands just waving back and forth. I can see the expressions on his face, and I see him in me because now I'm sitting and I'm telling you all a story, and my hands are waving all over the place, and my facial expressions are just like him. My Big Daddy, love him. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank
A
you.
wonderful family story.
Yeah, it was
Thank
beautiful. You gave us a lovely picture into a man's life that we will never know, but thanks to you, we know it. And the love was certainly there. The imagery was lovely throughout, and the touching moments, you felt them. You felt them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a technical thing that if you're going to be using Zoom, be aware. Most of your face is there, but and you leaned in, so you were losing a little
Okay.
bit of your chin. So, and you have a lot above your head, so you could just have that there for you. And just like when you did the leather thing, right? Maybe
Mhm.
when you're out in the garden, because you did the walnut, like when you're at different places, if you physically, touch those things or smell those things, the freshness, get us in there. It will just deepen and enrich the story. But it on its own, the heart was there. It was just,
Thank
and that's
you.
what you want from a story.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't know it was real. Oh.
Any other thoughts, anybody?
Yes,
Yes.
I just
Valerie,
want, this is Martha. I just wanted to say, Valeria, how much I appreciated your story. I have tears in my eyes. I want to be a podcaster. You've been a huge inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Loved your
Thank
story
you.
about Big Daddy. I thank
Yeah,
you.
I loved him.
Today. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. So welcome.
Hi, Valerie. This is June. I also
Hi.
enjoyed your story. I grew up in the hairdressing business with my mom and the barber
Oh.
shop. And I just thought when you were doing the razor on that leather,
Yes.
I was back and I was 7 years old in my mother's salon.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
it was
remember
great.
that.
It was great imagery. And you know, to this day, Valerie, I am frightened of razors.
Yeah, they're not my favorite thing, but because of him, I'm not as fearful of the razor because of him.
Yeah. So thank you. I love the way you told it. And Judy's telling you to raise your head up a little bit more in your screen was a good tip. So you
Well,
have
this
such
is
a
my
beautiful face.
thank you. This is my I got a new computer for Christmas and it's much larger than what I'm used to using. So this is my very first time doing a Zoom on this new laptop. So I'm still learning.
Good for you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Valerie, can I just say, I'm sorry
Sure.
my picture's not up. It's Rhoda here.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But living in England. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I missed the beginning of your story, but when I got through, it was like I was in your shoes because I had the very same experience with my daddy. Not the hairdressing bit, because my father was blind, but he had such wonderful crafts and things. But his biggest single gift to me was his storytelling, which has carried on right throughout the family.
Yeah.
I thought it was so moving, and I've got my daddy in my mind all day now, but he's never very far away anyway. So thank you for that, Valerie. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Valeria.
You're welcome.
May
And-
I speak for a moment, Eric? This is Shiraz.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Valeria, I loved your story. I'm Shiraz from Chandigarh. And what I wanted to say is that I felt your Big Daddy's presence right when you were telling.
Yay.
And I think that is such a wonderful feeling. If you could communicate that to us, that is amazing. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks, Eric.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.